enzyme itself is just sort of dying, and it's probably enzyme will probably never support React 17 or any version of React past 16. So, I had that revelation. I wrote an article a little bit about why enzyme is dying and why it's not even really a good thing for React Native to begin with. And then I also, part of that process, I also learned kind of like the right way to test React apps. And I sort of landed on Kent Dodd's methodology for testing React. And I also wrote another article about how to sort of adopt that mindset for React Native specifically with React Native testing library.
That's awesome. Did you manage to get any feedback from him?
No, I didn't. I tagged him on Twitter, but I didn't hear anything. I didn't honestly expect to, but
yeah. Well, he used to be all about testing, but he's kind of moved on to Remix his current thing.
Yeah, he's on Remix now. Yeah.
But maybe one of the things that you can, so this is a nice follow-on from, I think you joined us maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and you started talking about how you wanted to grow your reputation and learn in public about React Native. I think this is a really good start. Very nicely done, and very assertive titles, which is good. Very provocative. Probably like the next tier you sort of can get yourself into is the React Native podcast, or the Chain React podcast, because I know that they do have frequent guests on, and some of these insights definitely resonate with that audience. And I would just reach out, just be a little shameless about it. You've done the work. Make sure you get the most out of it that you can.
It's the like Chain React podcast.
No, Chain React is the conference. It's the Infinite Red podcast.
Oh, Infinite Red. Yeah. I listen to their stuff. I subscribe to their newsletter. So yeah.
Just ping them and get on. Yeah. You're like not that far away. So like, I guess like the naive approach would be, all right, I'll just put up a blog post a week, right? But if you feel like you have something strong and you've gone through the research and you've done the work, just try to milk it. Try to put yourself out there. It's gonna be a little like, if you're not getting rejected, you're not trying hard enough. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah, I feel that. That's good. That's good advice. Yeah.
So try to look for rejections. And it's like a weird mental flip from like, hey, I will wait until someone asks me on to the podcast. No, just put yourself out there.
Great.
And, we'll see where this leads, but I think you've got the goods.
Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else has like updates to share? Stuff you've been doing. I know. Like there's been a bunch of updates. I haven't. My update is I started my own a new blog, just because that's how I cope with changing jobs. But everyone who's been sort of recent attendance in this meetup like knows the story. But yeah, if anyone's interested, like we can talk about it. But oh yeah, Chad, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I technically completed the first. So I wrote like what you call it. I wrote like a design doc for my project, because I guess I'm kind of going the route. It's somewhat based off of your suggestion, but I'm trying to be as kind of professional as possible. And so I want to write like a series of articles just based on all the work that I've done. And then as I kind of work on my side project, and I guess this is not necessarily an update, I guess it's more of a question, but I want to write a series of blog posts on the work that I've done for my side project and kind of what I've learned, but I'm kind of wondering how to kind of phrase it, in the sense of, should I focus solely on just what I did in my side project, or should I make it a collection of, oh, these are the tools that I used in my side project, this is how you use them, kind of based on my perspective? Like, it's kind of what I was thinking.
Why do you have to choose? Why can't you just say yes to everything? Have you seen this post, how I write backends?
No.
Okay, so it's super popular. Let me show you. So yeah, I mean, the answer is yes to everything, right? Share the side project and then share the meta around the side project. So this is how I write backends, and it's look at how many stars it's got, 5,000 stars. And if you look at Hacker News, like I think it's a pretty popular. How do I do this? Is it Hacker News? Yeah, there we go. Maybe it's this one. Yeah, I think I just have to search here. Yeah, this is one of the most upvoted sort of GitHub repo things. It just like randomly dropped this guy documenting how he ships stuff and then just talks through the technical choices. I think it's just a really interesting way to share your product and make it usable for others. Even though they may not be interested in your side project, they may be interested in the tech stack behind your side project, and that's a separate piece of content you can work on.
Oh, I definitely will check this out. Kind of, I guess I'll try to steal the format.
Steal the format, yeah. I also like, so this is not a blog post. This is kind of a blog post, but it's a post that people can like file issues on and ask you questions, and like it's just like a more extended blog post that is an industry resource that people really like, especially if you spend a lot of time figuring out how some different pieces fit together. I think it's a worthwhile effort.
All right, thank you so much. I'll grab that. Much appreciated.
Brian, what's up?
Oh yeah, hey guys. Yeah, Sean, you gave advice, I want to say like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or something like that, of just kind of like going all in and just like learning in public and building things. And it's actually been really helpful. There was a feature that I shipped for work. There actually was like a bug in it, and I actually ended up through the debugging process because they like wanted to do something on top of what I had built, and that was like what made the bug, because it wasn't extensible for other things. And then I actually like figured out the fix. I was able to solve it and ship it, and it like worked seamlessly. And it was like more back end API type stuff that I had done. And I'm kind of trying to get more comfortable with, what is it? You get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And there's a lot of like front end doing back end now and like full stack stuff that is super like uncomfortable, because I'm not used to like writing functions or scripts or hooks and those types of things. So it's been kind of like super messy, but it's been really cool because there was like so like one of the features was a token gate, but there's an SDK that doesn't use a blockchain that basically we needed to check. So I wrote a hook, I used their API, and I was able to like get back a Boolean. But it was cool of like check. So there's like an approved list of tokens, and then it's like if your list includes at least one of these, so use like the sum method. So use like the sum of one list and the sum of another, and then you compare them. And I like, to be honest, you guys, like I didn't really understand like a lot of like the data science-y questions you get in like an interview, but that was the first time that I realized like, oh, so this is why like the data, like the DSNA, those methods are really powerful, because I had to implement that in a feature. So I'm a little bit more bought in of like not DSNA questions being frivolous, but like that's a reason why, because I needed to understand how to use an array and then check another array and then see if there's a similar value, but at least one in one list, at least one in another, and then compare them to create a true value or a false value. But I just want to say that advice was really helpful at least for me.
Thank you. Well, now you're I think you're about to become one of those interviewers that's like, no, actually we do this at work.
Yeah, it was weird because it's like, I don't know, it's like a double binary list, like all these questions. It's like, it seems kind of like, why are you asking these things? And
it's
just
abstract
kind of like,
until it's not. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it became super real because I was like, oh, okay, so that's why you have to know these things, because it was weird. And I like had asked actually on Stack Overflow like a question about it, and then it got like a ton of people responding back of like, actually you could do it this way, and actually you could do it this way, and like it was cool.
Can you share that? I want to see it.
Yeah. Let me pull it
This
up.
is a good stuff. Yeah, and you should write it up, because like this is a really cool story.
Yeah, I mean, it was super interesting, because I think a lot of now what I'm learning with like debugging stuff is you have to know like the right question to ask. And it's like, if you don't really understand it, you're not asking the right question. So it was like, for me, I was like, okay, like I had to diagnose something, and it was like, why wasn't it running? So if you scroll all the way up, you'll see it basically. So it's like, think about like there's a list of, NFTs that you're going to get back from the hook that I wrote. And then you want to check what the user or the token holder has compared to a list of approved values. And then you have to like merge them together. So that's how you use like the sum method. But what was really interesting was if you see the result 2.name, that needed to be basically a sum check off of an array. And I was just checking like the specific value of something. And that was like it. And I got like 80% of the way there on the fix, but like I needed like that last 10%. And that comment right there, it was like how you get like result of 1 to the result of 2, checking item 2. That was like the additional part. And it was kind of cool because I'm like front end doing more back end. And I was like, I got so close and I was like, why didn't I get the fix? And that was why, because I needed to have checked the sum value of the second listings of the arrays. But it was cool. Like I learned so much like from that. And I was talking to a couple other friends, and if you scroll down to the other comments, like there's more ways to like solve this, but like the one that was the comment I think is the most efficient. But
well, depends what you mean by efficiency, right? Because in an interview setting, you would be asked, okay, what if there's 10,000 of these? What if there's 1 million of these? What if there's 10 million of these? And what you're doing is a nested loop. So you have an n squared complexity in here. I think either that or it's like log 2n if depending on how sum is internally executed. So you might want to think about that, right?
Yeah, it's only dealing with like at most like 5 values, like getting back. So there's not like a ton of values, but at least for now, like I just needed like the fix to like get the job done and like get it done. But it's cool because a lot of people like have other thoughts on it, and they were like, actually, this is like the best idea like so far. Like it was just interesting seeing like multiple ways to solve the same problem. And I haven't really been exposed to situations like that before. So I don't know if anyone else like would find that interesting, but it's just cool to see how data structures and algorithms is like what I'm learning about right now, but directly applicable to work world and solving problems. It was really cool. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone have like similar stories or stuff like that? Like I to me, it's cool that Stack Overflow is actually helpful. Like it's maybe not that common. They usually you get your issue shut down for being a duplicate. No, but this seems like a really helpful and lovely community. I do think like, so I tend to do this and I'll put like a comment as to what I'm expecting versus what I got, which helps people basically develop test conditions and articulate what you're looking for and what you expected, right? So that's the one change I would do to this, but otherwise that's a really, really cool story. Do you have an opinion yet on data structures versus algorithms?
Ooh, I don't think I know. I don't think I know enough.
Okay.
I mean, I'm at this point just trying to understand how data is organized on blockchain. So like specifically for like, you have a list of tokens, then those tokens have metadata. So then like you'll like parse through that, or like you'll build off the API. But I do need to learn more on this. Like that's kind of where I'm looking to get more into. I think like functions make sense to me. Data structures are kind of weird because like when you build off API, it's like you're checking the items, but like, are you checking the right data of those items? So that's what I'm currently going through, is like, that's the uncomfortability for me, at least for now.
Yeah, no, I mean, but now you have a very strong motivation.
100%, yeah.
I like this blog post on data structures that you actually use at work. So this is by Gergely, who is a friend of our community. Just talked to him yesterday, actually. And there's more in the related blog post that you can see here. So I'm just gonna send you both. By the way, you notice how I search for things. I always look for meta commentary around content because it's really rich source of insights. So if you're interested in studying up on practical data structures and algorithms, oh boy, there's my look back. Can you still hear me? Yeah, you should be able to hear me. I think I switched back here. Cool. Well, so and then the other comment that I might make is I think I did not mention it in the book yet because I think I had this insight after the book. But personally, data structures matter more to me than algorithms over time. being really good at data structure design can reduce the like if you have a bad data structure, you have to make up for it with algorithms. But having a really good data structure, including a smart data structure that self-balances, can really simplify your algorithms. It's something I'm going to appreciate more and more as I study data structures. It's just something to look into, or something to think about, or disagree with.
That's super interesting. There's like for work, I'm working on a feature where basically like you write text, but I need to account for bold or like enter. So that's like regex like backslash n to like enter. I need to track those. But it's like interesting because like when you create kind of like a way in which you can be tracking formatting, you save that as a string. But it was like interesting because I was looking in DynamoDB of like how the data was saved, and then it saves the regex, but then you need that formatting to then use the data structure to then pull it into the items. So it is interesting. Like that's a lot of where I'm learning how to like front end display data, but also like users input data to the back end, and then you need to like serve that somewhere. But there's so much stuff with DSNA that like I got like a couple books to kind of just like at least start to dive down into the iceberg, but there's so much that's like, like the iceberg of like there's what you see, but there's what's happening.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, you have an iceberg in your poster in the back of your screen.
It's what reminds me of it, honestly, because it's like there's so much stuff that you get exposed to as a developer, but then it's like you like learn way more. I was actually talking to a security solution engineer for work, and they were teaching me like OWASP type stuff.
Yep.
There's like even like security is just like crazy. There's just like so much stuff that's out there, and they were like showing me a whole bunch of stuff that's like exploits to avoid with like authentication and provisioning data. And I was like, okay, like I thought that I was spending a lot of time learning the real stuff, and then it's like I find out that like there's things people can do that completely undoes all of that, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like there's just a lot.
Actually, that security, your meeting with the security engineer, I think that's also a really good blog post. Stuff you didn't know.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Maybe just list it out, and I think that'd be a really good start. For me, like it actually disturbs me a lot that most people don't know about OWASP, because the whole point of OWASP, like especially like the OWASP top 10, is to educate people about like, all right, you don't have to be a security engineer, but here's the top 10 things that you need to know. And most people still don't know it. So,
it was kind of funny because like on a Zoom, because we had like a meeting and they were like going through just checking vulnerabilities and things. And I had like a Zoom, like a one-on-one Zoom with him. And I was like, hey, I Slacked him. It's like, hey, like, could I just like jump on a Zoom? So he like walked me through like one of the things that he had found. And I was like, this is some like voodoo magic. Like, I don't even know like how you did this. It was just super interesting to see. And like, it's one thing to like read someone else talking about it, but then when you actually experience it and they walk you through how they did it, and then you're like, oh snap, like I now know how you did this, and like I didn't know that you could do it. It was really creepy, you guys. Like very creepy, very scary. I mean, important to know, and makes me now want to go down the rabbit hole. But
was it one of these categories, or was it something more exotic?
It's like local storage type exploits for like sessions. So I think it might have been like broken authentication. I'm not actually sure, but it was like authentication related things for like tokens. It's like JWT tokens, but then like if you know the token, you can like use it to like log into system. Yeah, it's
did really he tell you to move everything into cookies?
We only had kind of like a brief meeting to like talk about it. I don't even think we're like there quite yet, but he didn't mention cookies as like something to look at. But
yeah, I've been in a few of these conversations, and some people are very absolutist that you have to put everything in cookies because of HTTP only, which is the browser policy that isolates it from JavaScript.
Interesting. I'll have to ask him. I'll ask him about that. Yeah,
it's a deep rabbit hole, and security experts don't agree. So good luck.
Okay. Well, that's concerning, but also comforting. Like, at least there's like a conversation happening. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a right answer. It's like you try to go with the path of least exploitation, but even
you can
still,
search, you can search my Twitter for all this. I've just been involved in way too many of these, and I'm just like, all right, two of you have like very opinionated answers, and I will use one. I'll use one of you when I need to. So either you go down the JWT path, or you go down the HTTP path.
Mhm.
My internet is dying right now. JWT.
But you've made tweets on this because I'll totally
No,
check
no,
it
no.
out.
I've been involved in conversations. All I do
okay.
is I tweet out about stuff, and then people teach me.
That's cool.
So yeah, you could just kind of go through and I think this is the conversation that I would highlight, and just go explore the thread around that. It's pretty entertaining, but also some people are probably more opinionated than they should be. But yeah, I'm just gonna share this and for you to explore.
That's
All right,
awesome.
I don't want to get too deep into that. Okay, so but thank you for sharing. This is the point of a meetup, right? Like we want to meet up every now and then, and check in on progress, get to know each other, share issues, and some people may not have experienced this stuff yet, but they might, and so I think that's the power of community, that you experience things that you may not have alone. This week we're talking about betting on technologies. So we're sort of going through every week. So for those who are new, we have all the past meetups recorded and posted up, and we're sort of going through week by week through the chapters. Recently, we started on the strategy section, and now we're here in the learning strategy piece, and then we're going to go into career strategy and business strategy next. Betting on technologies, I think it's an interesting. To me, like this can be one of the most financially rewarding topics if you bet right, and I think that's a very interesting way to think about it. The other thing to think about is like this is in terms, you can think about it two ways. Like one, in terms of picking technologies to use, and then two, picking companies to join, in terms of thinking about like the upside of a company's share price or whatever. And I definitely practice a lot of that because if you're involved in early stage startups, you do this a lot. I just want to leave it there. I don't want to sort of monopolize the conversation. Like, has anyone faced any sort of recent bets or decisions that we can sort of use as an example?
I can give some examples of
Yeah,
bets that I did not take.
Okay.
Like old ones, like EJBs, right? Like when J2E was everything, people are learning EJBs. I don't know how many of you even know what EJB is. Like that. It's Enterprise Java Beans. It is a mix of RMI and Java Beans, right? Like where there's a remote interface, you can call into a function. It's like gRPC for like you call into a function and it'll return an object, a remote function, and it'll return an object basically. So it's without HTTP as the channel. You just simply call it over remote, but it's not standardized interfaces. Well, though it was the thing because it was very complex, hard to learn. There were a lot of people taking on Oracle certifications and whatnot back then. It was the hard thing to learn back then. But HTTP APIs, the REST APIs completely supplanted it. Like completely, like no one talks about EJBs. Like none of you know what EJB is, and for a good reason. And I didn't put enough effort. I didn't try to get good at it. Maybe because of laziness. Probably it's laziness, but those are like something that's hard to learn. Or I think the way technology goes, like anything that's hard to learn, someone makes it easier. Like everything is, someone makes it easier, and you can just go to that. Like if you are in the edges, you can go directly to that easier path. So that's a change. That's one that I skirted, and one change that I'm making at work right now is we built some of these. So we wanted to modernize our user interfaces. We started building with React. I think I touched on it last time.
Yep.
And we couldn't get it working, and felt natural when I looked at it. Like this is HTML and HTML and CSS, and it's just the moment I saw it, it felt natural. because if I don't need complexity, it won't have complexity. It will not have anything, right? That was my main thing. It's like, oh, this is natural. You cannot reduce this further. This HTML and CSS are the basic for a site. And if your page doesn't need anything else, it'll just have HTML and CSS. That's amazing, right? Like that. So that was a really technical choice that I made. I don't know how long Svelte will be supported. I don't know all of that, but at least it feels like this is the simplest decision I can make right now. Like instead of choosing complexity, choosing the simplest option that feels naturally close to the foundation.
Yeah. So I do remember this conversation. I think it was like 4 weeks ago almost. It's been quite a while since we talked about this.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting case study. Jose and Chad, I see your hands up. I'll get to you in a second. Let's talk a little bit about this. So it's weird. I'm in a weird position because I'm close enough to both the React and Svelte teams that I can argue on both sides. And the approach to complexity is an interesting argument because React would argue that they subsume a lot of the complexity for you and expose a simple interface. For a lot of people, it's too simple, right? Like React does not have any styling options out of the box. But the complexities of consistency of the user interface is pretty much what React specializes in. And React people would argue that Svelte leaves you to shoot yourself in the foot with some of the consistency problems that or reactivity problems that Svelte just kind of assumes that you'll take care of because it's so much simpler in the core. And Svelte's argument is kind of the opposite, right? Like because Svelte has a fairly simple core, you're not taking on that much JavaScript weights. You're not taking that much engine complexity that you're so far divorced from the rendering cycle that you don't even know what's going on under the hood. I don't know. So basically, what I'm saying is like when you say adopt the technology because it's simpler, people can use that same argument for two things.
Right. Yeah, I agree, and I think I should also understand that my use case is not. I'm not writing Facebook. I'm not building Facebook or that level of complex applications. In fact, I do have a team that's building forms using React. So it's not like we've not completely eliminated React or anything like that. But
it's very hard to get away from it.
Yeah, in certain cases, it does feel so natural with Svelte. And now, while we have after starting to build Svelte, now I'm looking at Quick that's making a different argument. It's hey, you guys are just making up the wrong. It's a problem. This morning he was Misko, I think he was the creator of Quick.
Yeah, Misko. Yeah,
Misko. He was arguing for a different. You guys are doing it wrong. Like it has a different way of solving. It's like the front end should resume, the back end should take it as far as possible, and the front end should resume that work. And it's a completely different approach. Well, that sounds. I think that if that pans out and solves, that could be a completely different paradigm as well. So just watching it.
Yeah. So for those who are interested, Mishko has been doing quite a bit of work around this. This is Ryan actually from Solid.js. So I think he had this hydration is pure overhead blog post. This one went semi-viral over the past couple of weeks. So this is the one to read if you're interested in catching up on this discussion, because I think it's probably the most significant effort in front-end development, front-end frameworks in the past 2-3 years. So it's worth considering. It's just like it's getting a lot of opposition even from the Svelte community. So I think it's useful. I just don't know if it's like. So this is a question for me of. All right. So let me summarize the argument so that we can have a constructive debate about this. The argument of Quick is that instead of hydrating your so typical JavaScript front-end frameworks, what they do is they do server-side rendering of your front-end, and they send over the HTML, and then they send over the data, then they send over the JavaScript, and then they use the JavaScript to re-render the data to get back to where it was on the server side to resume that state on the front end, right? So you can that then becomes a client-side web app. his argument is like maybe just not do that and just make every part of every function execution serializable. So like this is obviously the ideological best in terms of performance, right? Like you're not sending or downloading any JavaScript or additional data that you don't use. I think the problem becomes whether or not you need this, because if you have good enough, like if this fits within reasonable performance boundaries, then maybe you don't care about this. And the trade-off to get this level of improvement is that you have to author your syntax in kind of a weird way. That may not be a good trade-off. So part of the principle, part of the resistance that Mishko and the Quick team are running into is that perfect. So this is maybe like the theoretical best, but maybe people don't care enough because they have something that's good enough, which is Svelte for performance at least, or solid.js, or whatever is a little bit closer to some paradigm that people like. So I think there exists a lot of very smart engineering and very enticing bets that are like this. There's often a theoretical best language or framework or database or whatever that like the really super smart people are using, and then there's the popular one. And like betting, this is like one of the key choices in betting on technology, right? Like like this is like really fun, but then like this is the one that has a lot more usage. It seems to have like better developer experience, but like clearly is worse off in some obvious metric that the theoretical better language is winning on. So then my principle for that is like, what is good enough? Focus on your needs, not benchmarks, not theoretical like discussions. Like and sometimes your needs include hiring, sometimes your needs include ecosystem, and these are non-technical issues. But unfortunately, you have to factor those into your discussion.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Mishko and team use this advantage to build something that makes every other system very hard to compete with. Like if they can leverage this like 5x improvement and build a layer that requires 5x improvement, like show some user interfaces that require 5x improvement, then it becomes like, oh, you cannot do this with anything else except for Quick. Like if they find it.
Yeah, if you talk to him, he has examples. It's just like, I don't know what, I don't know how to assess it. Like people are making their own decisions on that as well. So let me show you one more thing, which is another like really interesting tech choice decision, right? Maybe I can't really find it. This one. Where does he talk about TypeScript? So a few years ago, Flow, there's sort of a few flavors of compiled to JavaScript technologies, and Flow was the Facebook one, and everyone was like, and the people who really like type systems actually preferred Flow, but it was just a little bit harder to use, a bit less well documented, and that made it, and quite honestly, like the Flow team did not do a good job of community management. But yeah, TypeScript has definitively won. And it's one of those things where like Elm, like I've tried Elm. Elm is fantastic. It's actually very beginner friendly and has a nicer type system as well. But again, like theoretically better, but still like in practice, like the wrong bet to make. And it's a very difficult choice, especially if you're like smart enough or intellectually engaged enough to like understand like Hindley Milner, like type safety or whatever, and to realize that it doesn't matter, which is really brutal. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up a few data points, but everyone has experience with betting on technologies and having it not work out or work out through unusual reasons. Jose, I feel like this is a good point to bring you in.
It's funny that you mentioned Elm as the last example because it's related to what I'm about to say. So I had the same problem. Like I was obsessed with Elm. Like I found it through the Redux docs, as they mention it as like prior art. And I started using it and I was like, wow, like this is superior in terms of productivity. But then, I mean, what you just showed happened. And yeah, I use TypeScript now, and I'm in a similar decision now. I discovered Clojure like a couple of years ago, and I just had like a 2-week break from work, so I went deep and started using it. And it's like this technology I love working with. I can see how it's like super productive. Like I code faster, I have less errors. It's so much more fun to code with it. But I'm in the same like, oh, I'm gonna adopt this, and like, yeah, it's been 10 years now. It's still like, you know, top 20 language. The community is amazing. Like for learning, they'll help you out. They'll go with you into your bugs, and they're super nice. But I guess it's like what you said. It's like, what am I optimizing for? Am I optimizing for hiring 200 people? I don't think I'll be able to find enough Clojure developers who can work
It
remotely.
depends. So
Yeah.
if you talk to the Clojure developers, what they'll say is they will quit jobs to join you just because you use Clojure, right?
Yeah.
And so it's tricky.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
What other factors are you considering in your choice?
no, right now I'm just frustrated with my workflow. Like I mean, at the beginning, someone spoke about testing React Native applications. So yeah, mostly like working with front end, and somewhat like now the lack of interactivity is as you start seeing examples of how interactive a workflow can be. I've been going into Faro and Clojure the past like year and a half, and now like my job frustrates me more because I'm using like JavaScript tooling, and even my Rails backend that I'm like pretty fluent with, like TDDing the stuff. So it's like it's way more interactive than the front end stuff. That's begun frustrating me now. And I'm like, God, I need to change my stack because I know what's possible. Like I can't bear the lack of like fluidity. And yeah, that's like where I'm at. It's more of like a personal productivity type of thing, and I can't unsee the interactive work now, so I'm screwed. Yeah.
Well, so I mean, it's not. Are you making a personal choice, or are you making a choice for your whole team?
This is a personal choice, and my team is still like so small that I could just like gradually transition. But even like as a career choice, I don't know if like it's probably more productive to just know my way front and back using JavaScript, TypeScript, and just learn. Like what I've been trying to do is I'm trying to like, and I think this is like this could be a blog post, but I've started documenting like the lessons from the workflows. So like, hey, maybe I could implement some things to make my JavaScript workflow more like the Clojure stuff. It's hard. I've been trying it, but it could be like, hey, lessons from obscure languages that you can bring to your.
I think that's useful. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about this. So first of all, I think that your happiness with your toolchain matters, even if there's no demonstrable productivity increase. If it just makes you happy, if it makes you enjoy your job, then you should do it, right? Like life is short. Like work with tools that you like. But then obviously you do have a responsibility to your team. You said that it's small enough that it's fine, but you're making a choice for them too. The other thing I always think about is so I think it's a really good idea to cross-pollinate ideas from other ecosystems. So Prettier was one of the most loved and fastest adopted tools. Like I think Prettier is only like 5 years old. And within like 1 to 2 years of its release, like everybody was using it. And it's basically inspired by Go format. One of the, I think James Long was the creator of Prettier, and he just like saw Go format and he was like, okay, why don't we have this in JavaScript? And he just made it one weekend, and that was it. So if you can see a similar analogy that maybe tried to do that, but obviously you're constrained by type systems.
Yeah, that's a great example. Like one obvious one is like bringing the REPL, like the REPL workflow to a JavaScript. I mean, you have it in the browser, but the kind of Clojure REPL workflow you have, that would be like a cross-pollination thing.
A lot of people try to bring like Smalltalk back or some form of Lisp. Like essentially React is a Lisp. They just they changed the round brackets to angle brackets. So yeah, there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas. Let's see. Jay has one comment, and then I'll come to you, Chad. What is Jay's comment?
It's actually sort of touching on what Jose was saying and this tweet. So Rome Research, the company that makes a tool, they are purely they are a Clojure company. They have a Clojure stack. They like Clojure script and Clojure. And for apps, they have built this. This guy who worked with them to build the Rome app. They transpile Clojure code to Clojure Dart and Flutter. Like that's sort of like one, because I think they use that stack, right? Like so, it's a sort of it touched on three different things. Like we talked about, they as a team chose Clojure, and they would go all the way to even writing a compiler to build apps like in the same one language. And it also their choices. So that's and you are interested in Clojure. It all touched on the same thing. It's so as a team, you pick on something. You pick some technology. You can go all the way, like if you can afford it.
So are you telling Jose to work on Clojure scripts or?
No, I'm saying it's if Clojure is interesting to you, then I think all these tools are emerging where you can stay on Clojure. So you have Clojure script to build front end, you have Clojure Dart to build apps, and you have Clojure to build back end. You can stay Clojure all the way through, like all across all your stacks.
Yeah, my concern is a bit of a yak shave. You're now maintaining the compiler, and there's always going to be some sort of impedance mismatch. Tough choice. I don't know how to help you there. we can feel for you. That's all I can do. What I will say, the Brendan Ike comment would be just always bet on JavaScript. It's the lowest common denominator, and it's like everyone has problems with it, but it's everywhere, and which is really annoying to argue for, because this is not a place of ideological purity. It's just like it's just a default that seems to outlast any other more spirited attempt at doing something better for the programming community. Chad, you had your hand up.
So I hope this isn't necessarily derail the conversation, but I'm not sure if I read it in your book or if I heard it from somebody else, but I know there would, like, in terms of betting on new technologies, I remember hearing, like you kind of want to have like a stack that you're super comfortable with. And I don't remember exactly like the what the person talked about in terms of what that consists of, but like just have a stack that you're super comfortable with, and then bet on other technologies. So I guess I kind of wanted to ask, when in your career do you start betting on technologies? And I mean, you might have written about this in the book already, but I was just kind of something that popped into my head.
Yeah, I may have commented somewhere about it. I don't really know the exact words I use, so I can't really search for it. But I do think that people who are getting started in their careers should be minimally productive, right? Like choose a minimally productive stack that at least you can get a job, at least you can get paid to write software. It's kind of it. And any requirement that people throw at you in this domain, you can do. And I think that's a really good baseline requirement to have, because then you can always fall back to, hey, like, there's this fancy toy that like I could try out, but like there's this other thing like I just know really well that gets the job done. Let's just do that. So the canonical reference for that is choose boring technology. I think this is kind of the the philosophy behind that. So you want to have your set of boring technology, and it's pretty funny because I know some fairly prominent JavaScript people who came from PHP, and that for them the boring technology was PHP, right? It's super, it's old, it's very reliable, it's kind of straightforward in its complexity. Then they spent 4 or 5 years in JavaScript, and they were learning the whole JavaScript stack. And most recently, the guy, so this is Chris from Scotch.io and DigitalOcean. He was like, I'm just going back to PHP. I'm just not as productive in JavaScript, and he's fine. And I think it's a really interesting choice, because like at the end of the day, like, did he waste his time in JavaScript? Probably not. Probably he's just a much better programmer from having immersed himself in the other stuff. But in terms of optimizing for productivity, when he was picking his new technology, he went back to PHP, and that's kind of the boring technology stats. What else? Yeah, the other comment that people have is usually about the innovation credits one, which is you're allowing yourself to choose 1 or 2 new toys, and everything else needs to be boring. Everything else needs to be things that you know extremely well, and like there's nothing to learn. It's just boring. And so yeah, I think that's a really good way to manage your risk as well, so that you're like you're trying all these new techniques and products, but you still need to ship. And sometimes if you're getting down the yak shape and you're trying all the new toys, you end up forgetting to actually deliver software to users, and that's what you're here for, right? So yeah, that's what I'll comment about that. Maybe one more, maybe I'll cover a couple more items that I really like to tell people about. One more thing is don't serve every wave. I like this actually. So if people know the Shop Talk Show, Shop Talk Show is the very super long running front end podcast with Chris Coyer. And they call it like surfing, right? Like when you're actually surfing, if you try to surf every wave, you just get very destroyed. Because like you can't really muster the energy to ramp up and make the most out of every wave. The good surfers just wait until a big wave comes, and then they find a big wave, and then they surf that one because it's worth your time. So avoid wasting energy. Learning how to identify the waves is, I think, a big part of picking the right technology. And so we have discussions in future weeks. We have one on megatrends if you want to read ahead about identifying waves. But I do think that that's a big part that nobody trains you for in tech, but like, hey, it's like a huge part of like making technical decisions and also career decisions as well. So I love talking about this kind of choices, because it's the stuff that you don't learn in school. All right.
Sean, I had a question on that. So there was surfing. It does seem like that we need to keep our feelers out, even if we are not surfing every wave. One example from my experiences, I was purely a Java guy, and then at one point, I moved to a team that was writing CoffeeScript. That's when the whole paradigm of async IO. I got an experience with working with async IO. Like, yes, Java has an IO, but no one usually uses it. Like that experience of, oh, now I can fetch all the data needed in parallel versus having to do them sequentially was a new idea to me, right? That I just learned because I happened to be on a team that worked on Node. So it does seem like, so in my team, so if I had stayed on, let me be on Java and then wait for the next wave. I didn't know that Node was going to be, this was back in Node when Node was not even V1, right? That was the time that team was working on CoffeeScript. So it seemed like we need you have to keep the feelers out so you can learn these little paradigms that you know. So I now work with people who just worked on PHP and they cannot think async, like they cannot think that, oh, you have to get data from these 5 different systems. I'll get them one after another, procedural, right? Because this async thinking is missing, in those cases. So I think there's a little bit of nuance there, like in terms of how much you want to invest. Maybe a Saturday afternoons like this, spend time learning what others are doing, and then just keep the feelers out.
I would agree with that. I think you need to bucket technologies that you hear about into different tiers of how much do I care about this, right? So neither of us are new to this, but for those who haven't heard of it, there's sort of the levels of concern from the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar, right? So think about whether or not you're going to hold off on the technologies just because you just decided not to get into it, or you're assessing, meaning, and what is the correct level of assessing, which is maybe I'll check out a few talks, maybe I'll read the docs, but I won't clone the repo, I won't try it out. Trial is like, actually, let's try and build something, right? Like let's try and build a small project, do the hello world, do a few demos, actually get your hands on code. And then adopt is actually used in production, right? This is the strongest level. So having some idea of like which is which, is really helpful. Is also interesting for if you work on developer tools to get into these tiers. Let me see if I can show you some examples of these. Where's the examples? I just going to try and get my email eyes in it. Oh no, it's going to send me a PDF. Well done, that works. My internet is super slow. So anyway, but like, just to give you a visual image, like this is how, some consultancies try to sort of sell you technologies, right? Like, and so the core stuff is like what you need to be on top of every single update in this, because you're using it in production, right? So you need to be on top of the change logs. You need to know the roadmap. You need to know the major issues and how to mitigate them. Trial is the stuff that you're testing, inside projects or whatever, and that has this lower tier of commitment. Assess has an even lower tier of commitment. I recommend just consuming content and not actually trying it out. And then hold would be the stuff that you're not even going to bother listening to. So like having those mental tiers in mind is really good. And that's a separate chapter on strategic awareness, right? Maintaining feelers, as Jay called it, about like, yeah, what's out there? I have the stuff that I know today, but I should also know what's coming down the pike or what I may not be aware of, and spending a little bit of time every week looking into like stuff that you have no idea about. Like this week, I learned about data log, and I had no idea what data log was, but I just went to a conference where like 5 talks were on data log. So I know it's like something that people are excited about that maybe I should check out. So for me, it's just moved from hold to assess, right? That's my slow progression. And sometimes this process takes years, right? Like for me, hearing about Svelte to actually trying it out, this took 1 year and a personal conversation with Rich Harris for me to take it seriously, right? And then eventually, I worked at a company, at Temporal, we adopted SvelteKit eventually. But this end to end probably took about 3 years. But having that really same process of just like evaluating, keeping things around, and understanding like what you're looking for it to progress to the next level, because these are pretty tight boundaries. You need to look after your time. Having a clear bar of like, okay, this has gone from cute toy to like, no, I need to take this seriously now, and then going hard on it, like being able to go 0 to 100 very quickly because you want to be early, if on something that's big. I think that's a really good skill to have in tech selection. But thanks for sharing that, Jay. And that's a really relevant thing. And you can see how like it's really hard for me to cover all these because they're all kind of related, right? Now I'm questioning myself because I put betting on technologies 3 chapters away from strategic awareness and megatrends. So maybe I should just rearrange these chapters. I don't know. It was very hard for me to rearrange the chapters. They're all interrelated because tech choice is career choice and career choice is tech choice. So I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's it. Does anyone else have any parting thoughts or comments, questions? Brian says, when you talk about moving fast, do you have a sense on how in depth to go when you start using a new tool, or is it a rush from 0 to 100 sometimes? So yeah, all right. So let's do this. So let's see, Brian. Thanks for the question. It's really good. Forces me to elaborate a little bit more. So let's say we're currently at assess, right? What does assess mean for me? And please, like, this is just my version of it, but please, think about what that means for you. My version of assess is listen to 2 or 3 podcasts and maybe a few talks. If the author of the project has done some talks, look for the big ones. Make sure you're up to speed on like what they're saying, how they pitch themselves, and what they're saying about it. And that's it. I'm not trying out the code. I'm not really. There just takes too much time to try all the code. If you want to have a very broad assess, like there's the question of how big is this circle, right? Like right now it's kind of drawn very narrow, but you can actually have a very, very big assess circle, a very, very small trial circle. And I think that's probably a sane way to do it if you're in a like a search pattern. If you're in like an evaluation pattern, you might have a small assess circle and a very big trial circle. Anyway, so then for trial, what does a trial look like? Trial would be like go through the hello worlds, right? So for me, I moved Remix to trial a while ago, and that meant that I needed to do a run through of everything that they have in the docs, right? So inside of the docs, they have like, they have these 2 tutorials. I need to go through that and understand everything, right? I don't have to read all the docs, especially they've increased the number of docs, but I need to at least go through these 2 things and understand what they're trying to sell you as their core thing. And I've run the code, like I felt it, and I might develop an opinion about like, I really like this part and I did not like this other part, and having an opinion on that. So this is kind of having a variant opinion, right? Like in the assess stage, you're just taking other people for their word. You say you're good at scale, fantastic. I believe you. But here at trial, you're forming your own opinion based on personal experience. And I think that's super important. You might want, at the advanced stages of a trial, you might want to build out a personal project, like, with this. So going beyond the tutorial and saying like, all right, I'll do one thing that is off the tutorial and see how far I can get, see what I run into that they conveniently forgot to tell me. And that often is the case because people don't invest enough in tutorials. There should be like 10 of these. So anyway, yeah, and then obviously finally for adoption, you want to think about the other aspects like the support, the maintenance, the licensing, the longevity of the project, funding, I guess, or whatever. One thing, so for example, one thing I cover at the end of the chapter here is a hard-won lesson from some very, very long time people, which is the value of values. Values are destiny. Imagine adopting a project and getting super deep into it, that you're in like the core team and everything, and then realizing you have different values from that. Value seems like a very wishy-washy, like soft human type thing, but it informs every single decision that is made by the team, and eventually it makes its way into the technology. So if you end up hating the values of that community, and it's the actual values, not the stated values, but the actual values, then you're going to end up diverging enough from the technology that you will not like it. So spending some time understanding like what the values of the community are is super important. So I would recommend reading, watching this talk from Brian Cantrell, because I think it really, you have to go through a few decades of tech choices to reach this position where you're picking technology based on values, not just the technical arguments. Yeah, my internet is just super slow right now, so I'm just not even going to load this video. But hopefully you get some sense of the dimensions in which you can evaluate technology. Right. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, that's about it for us. It's almost it's past the hour, but I thought this was a fantastic discussion. I really appreciate all you guys who contributed discussions. This is why I do this. Hopefully it's useful for you as well. And whoever's watching asynchronously, hopefully you can join us, even though it's 5 a.m. in your time. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you. I'll stick around, but otherwise that's it. See you guys next week. Bye.
See ya.